Okay, so you hopefully were able to come up with some other ideas for what else you might add to this list. Before we continue to the next section, which actually talks about how do we grade independent learning, I'd like to continue by going through our handout, and we went through journals 1, 2, and 3. But once we have actually taught the skills that the students need to learn in order to be a good learner in general, and or the skills that are specific to the course needs that we have in the course, for example, as I mentioned, if you're going to have them record a podcast or a movie or something of that sort. The next thing that you can see is after we have Journal 3, which is where they reflect on the language element that they chose, so that could have been listening or grammar, and they think about how they learned that language element. The next thing that I had them work on is listening. The reason that I had my students work on listening in this particular context as a portion of their independent learning is that listening was one of the weaker skills for my specific body of students. For your body of students, listening may not be a weak skill, but this is an opportunity for you to kind of guide them in practicing listening or grammar or whatever it is, so that it's more specifically geared towards their skills and what you recognize as a teacher that they are needing to work on or improve. So we also had a glossary because vocabulary is important. Our glossary basically contained words that were academic in nature because our students were required to start writing papers, academic papers. And they needed to be able to have a strong use of academic vocabulary. So we trained them in how to learn vocabulary tools, and we gave a follow-up assignment for the glossary so that they could continue to review and learn more vocabulary tools that were specific to academic language. So that's more or less how the course ran. It was throughout the entire semester. One of the things that a lot of the research shows, you can read about this in David Noonan. He has a great article out in Hong Kong University Press talking about independent or autonomous learning. And one of the things that he was talking about is, again, that when we first start independent learning, we can't assume that the students are going to know how to progress through independent learning. So this is why we set it up in stages. And this is part of the reason why with the handout that I gave you, it is set up in stages, and you'll see that the outcome happens over the entire semester. I don't actually expect them to be able to do independent learning on their own until they've had at least a semester in training. So that's something to think about when you consider doing independent learning. So the next thing that I'd like to talk to you about is, where does it fit? Where does this independent learning aspect or component fit into our grading? How do we assess this type of learning? So going back to the presentation I mentioned earlier on flipping the classroom that happened at Portland TESOL, International TESOL 2014. One of the concepts that they talked about was actually using gamification. And I thought this was brilliant because you see that it's actually used a lot now. So the person who explained the gamification model's name was Saucer, Jesse Saucer. And so his elements for gamification include experience points, and these experience points add up to the grades. So basically what he was mentioning, and I'll go back to this in 1 second, but what he was mentioning with the experience points is that instead of taking points away, which is what we currently do as teachers, so we give our students a quiz and we say, well, you get only 50 points out of 100. Instead of taking the points away and making it sort of making them feel defeated in a way, you are adding points for everything. So you're flipping the motivation, you're flipping the idea about everything. Here you would get 50 points. You may not have gotten 100 points, but you would get 50 points towards your executive level, or you can name the levels however you feel like adding them. But for example, this would be the equivalent of an A, but every time they complete an activity, every time they do something, they're gaining points towards the A, as opposed to taking points away from the A grade. And so this serves as more of a motivation for students than the other process, which we're taking the points away and making them feel bad about what they don't know. With this, we're actually encouraging them by saying, okay, you don't know that? Well, try the quiz again. Try taking it again to see if you can get more points than you did before. So those are experience points, and this is all part of the game industry. We have a game that you can actually start playing with your students called Trace Effects, and it's an English learning game that is sponsored by the U.S. State Department. You can find it online at english.org, the State Department English website. So the next thing are badges, and badges are a form of assessment. Whenever the students successfully complete a level or complete something, they get a badge. An example of this is, you probably have noticed this little thing on my wrist. This is something that helps you keep track of how many steps you walk every day. And recently I just got a badge for walking 10,000 steps. And so that makes me want to get the next badge, which would be walking like 50,000 steps or 100,000 steps. So the badges in English language classrooms could be also like speaking English all the time, or it could be for getting 10 quizzes right in a row. They get a badge, an achievement. So process bars give them feedback. So with the process bar, it's just basically a little bar on the screen, and you've seen these before where you have maybe this much space, and then the students are up to here. They see they still have to go this much further. And so they themselves are aware of their progress in the class and in the system, and it encourages them to actually complete the information because they see, ooh, I'm only halfway. That's okay, I can do this. I can keep going. I can make the rest of it. Achievements, so unlockables, and what this means is that whenever the students, when you're in the online course, for example, you're in Moodle, whenever the students have achieved 100% on 5 quizzes that you put on Moodle, there's a little element that is unlocked, and this element could give them 50 or 500 extra points towards their score and towards their progress bar. So it helps to stimulate and motivate them. Field trips. This could be like a little coupon for a field trip to another activity or another game that they could play in English for more points, extra credit points that will help them progress in their progress bar and in their point collection, or like a fake ice cream where they just get a little badge and it says, hey, you have an ice cream, this is worth 50 points, stuff like that. So one of the things that Mr. Saucer said for sure not to do is actually to have leaderboards. So leaderboards are when you compare the students and they can see the comparison. So like, who's the first, who's the second, who's the third. And one of the reasons for this is that in the gaming industry, they found that this actually has a negative effect on the gamers wanting to continue to play the games. And by gaming, I don't mean they are going to casinos. This is not the same gaming. The gaming industry are playing games like Trace Effects, the one I mentioned earlier, computer games that are not for gambling purposes. But back to this, what the research showed in gaming is that when the students are aware of their own progress, they shouldn't be compared with others because that's demotivating. And the last thing that we want to do is to demotivate our English language learners, because sometimes it's so hard to motivate them anyway. I just wanted to show you before we close some badges. So this is an example of the badges that you could give. You know, they got 2 tests right or 5 quizzes and they got like a gold, a star, and a trophy. Kudos, they did a good job on something. So these badges can just pop up on their screen and they can collect them in a certain area of your online platform. And you'll find that students are very motivated by badges and they work to collect them. So I think that this is a very positive way to motivate them and to continue to try to engage them in the ideas that are brought forward in independent learning. We're almost out of time, and I just wanted to share with you the last bit of information. In the abstract itself, as I wrote it, I mentioned that we would share together our experiences of independent learning. Because I was unfortunately not able to come today, I actually encourage you instead to continue to think about the concept of independent learning, and over coffee or on the metro or the bus or at a hotel or wherever you see the teachers that you're with right now or the other teachers in the conference that you're attending this weekend, I'd like you to continue this discussion. Share what you have done in independent learning that has worked for you. Please also feel free to email me any thoughts that you might have on independent learning and anything that you would like to share based on this presentation. My email address, you'll have to write it down, is evesmyth@gmail.com. So, I hope that this has been an interesting session for you. I hope that it's given you some ideas that you can, that have added to your base knowledge or encouraged what you already knew to be true about independent learning. I'd like to finish with some of the references. I'll just leave them up. So these were this is the information. We have Charlie and Saisbo from 2000. The handout, as well as some of the ideas that I mentioned when I was using independent learning, came from the curriculum development at the University of Macau in 2012, which is part of what I was involved in. Then we have Jesse Sauer, David Noonan, Biggs, Candy, which was where I got the definition for independent learning, and finally the last bit of information. So thank you very much for your time and your attention. I hope that the conference is going wonderfully for you, and I hope that it continues to go wonderfully. Again, the email address is evesmyth@gmail.com. Best wishes to you.